So obviously, the big narrative you've seen around Trump winning is about how much Gen Z switched up for Trump because he won more than both his other campaigns, and one of the big ones, of course, is young men. So it has here Sammy Gold tweeting out key shifts in the electorate. Young voters made up 16% of the electorate and continued their shift towards the right. Men ages 18 to 29, so that's my age group as well, voted decisively for Trump. So with women, it's about, I think that's 18 plus 18 for Democrats, which is down from plus 33 for Democrats in 2018. For men, it's plus 19 for Democrats in 2018 to plus 13 for Republicans in 2024. So for men especially, that's an insane shift. And I want to tell you what it isn't first, because someone tweeted, why are Gen Z males like this thing? I don't want to get demonetized. And I'm guessing it's like a 4chan thing. Someone posted this, and I want to talk about this because this is a narrative I see online a lot, and I think it's bullshit. Because this white, what is even the word I'm looking for? White grievance, maybe, is what I'm looking for as a white man myself. So the reason white racism is increasing is because this generation of young white men were raised to be the least racist generation of whites to ever exist in the history of this planet. We grew up being taught that racism was bad, that we were all going to move past it and work together towards a better future. Even here in the most traditionally racist part of the country, nearly every young white boy of my generation grew up watching black athletes, black actors, listening to black musicians. It was all normal. We were 95% post-racial. I'm just going to stop that there quickly because how many generations of Americans now have grown up watching black athletes? OJ Simpson was a footballer in the 60s. Black actors, maybe a bit later, but that's at least, there's been several high-profile black actors early on in Hollywood, but also from the 80s to the 90s to now, loads of black actors and black musicians have been popular for a long, long time. That doesn't mean shit. Like, that doesn't mean you've grown up in a post-racial society because you grew up watching non-white celebrities. But anyway, so as we got older, we stuck our hands out in friendship to everyone, like we've been taught to. And by then, every non-white group on the planet came by and sucker punched us from behind, called us evil white devils, and told us we deserved to die. We were ready and willing to move on from the past, and the rest of you weren't. Instead of shaking our hands and marching off together, you chose revenge against the only white people who've ever let their guard down. So now you won't be our friend. You won't be our friends. We're reforging the identity we're taught to shed. So I wanted to read that first because I've actually seen this kind of shit around. Yeah, if you're making the argument that young white men are the biggest anti-racists we've ever seen, and every minority group started being racist to them, so now they've decided to be racist themselves. That I'm not buying that argument. I'm not buying that argument, and I'll admit that yeah, they are turning really racist, but it's not for these reasons. This is total bullshit. Total bullshit of what, like, white people are now discriminated against, so they've gone more racist. We've seen that for a long time. No, a lot of white people grow up being promised a certain life in white racist countries that they don't get, and then they get more racist, and they have often grievances against minorities who might have done better than them. But this is bullshit. But anyway, there was on this post there was some other things I wanted to address before we go into the actual reasons. Someone replying to this isn't something new that the left wants to hear, especially now, but the left has completely left them behind, Gen Z males. All those posts from women about how they hate all men and ads and such add up. And when there's a candidate that at least tries to appeal to them, they'll go for that person. People saying like Joe Rogan did this, locked them in the house during COVID and they got radicalized. And it's another thing I've constantly rejected, that the left has abandoned young men. I really, really don't think this is true. Like, if we're talking about the actual left, like people like myself, and the one thing I'll say is we'll never be able to compete with like the manosphere because we do not center this like toxic masculine identity, and we do not believe that as men you are entitled to certain privileges in society, and you're, you know, essentially entitled to a certain lifestyle just because you're a man. We can't compete with that. And honestly, I don't think we should even try. Like, yeah, it's good to have healthy, like, traditionally masculine role models or whatever, people who are into like traditionally masculine stuff that maybe people can look at and be like, oh, you can be left wing, you can be in touch with your emotions, you can be in touch with your feelings, you can just be someone who wants the collective good of humanity and not be a fucking asshole, like, as well, and not be someone who like gives in to this selfishness or gives into this like stereotypical like male identity we're prescribed for a long time. Because yeah, we grow up but that's another thing, like, you grow up in a white patriarchy, and then your problem isn't with other races doing better than you or women. That's what they direct your anger towards. Your problem a lot of the time is with the capitalist system that is leaving you behind. So if we're talking about like white men, we're talking about like the whole generation as well, Gen Z. We're not just talking about white men, we're talking about Gen Z. Gen Z are dissatisfied with the system. Gen Z are being born at a time, like I've said before, they cannot achieve the same things as their parents. Like, when I talk to my parents about when they owned their like first home, their apartment, all this stuff, like, it's so different compared to now. If I talk to my grandparents who own their own homes as poor Irish migrants to London, and you watch videos of like single income, like working class people owning their own homes in London, because of either council homes or because they are more affordable, you see all that and you're like, we cannot afford a normal life. And people are dissatisfied with capitalism, and that includes white males. But the problem is, well, like with many things and many reactionaries in the past, they divert your anger to other things. So our problems collectively, I'm in this category as well. Technically, I guess I could be a Gen Z man. Um, you are fed as a man that, like, obviously there are no barriers to you being successful because you're a white man in a white patriarchy. So you don't have any of those systemic barriers. But then you believe you are entitled to a certain lifestyle, you don't get it, and then you're left thinking why. So thankfully for a lot of us on the left, you realize, well, it's because of the capitalist system, inflation, selling off public assets, selling off public housing in the UK. Margaret Thatcher did that. We can't afford this lifestyle. We can't afford a basic stable life, and the economy is going to shit. We're being paid worse, but having to go into like more debt, and the public services our parents enjoyed after the war, they're being destroyed as well in front of us. So we're wondering, like, why is our life so bad? And yeah, it's because of capitalism, it's because of the job market, it's because of just not being able to afford basic things. Like, when I go grocery shopping, some days, like, this is just such a small example. So, you know, like hot chocolate powder, what, like, this is not even long ago. Like, I don't buy many luxuries, but that was like 120 or 30. Now it's like £3. So when I go into the shop, I just decide like not to buy it anymore. And then it's like other things, like loads of vegetables I normally buy, they've gone up by like 50p every time I go in. I'm just like, I'm not gonna buy that anymore. I'm just like, why? I don't want luxury, but now it's feeling like the basics are luxuries, and that's how so many people across the Western world specifically are feeling. So when we're feeling so dissatisfied with, like, as a you know, a white 28-year-old Western man, we're feeling so dissatisfied, we're wondering why, we're looking to like understand the world. Maybe our education is poor, maybe we don't understand politics, maybe we don't understand economics. We go looking out community online. Maybe we don't have real life community, and that's of course a big problem. For me, I'm lucky enough, you know, I'm born and raised in London. I still live in London, have all my school friends, have a good social circle, play football with multiple different groups of men. Like, I'm not lonely. I'm not looking for male community. I have that throughout my life. I don't need it. But especially in America, where most people, especially for economic reasons, they can't stay where they grew up. You can't stay just in a gang with all your schoolmates, because the work isn't, especially if you're in a poor, like maybe like a rural town, you have to go somewhere else. So you lose contact with your community, and then you're looking for that online, that male community, and maybe you find it with podcasts. So have a look at this. For the election, the top streamers, this is streamers, but a lot of these are podcasts as well, the top streamers who covered the US election are all right wing, apart from Hassan. Hassan came third. All the others are not only right wing, they're fascists as well. Tim Pool, Tucker Carlson, Charlie Kirk. Asmongold, I guess technically isn't, but he went on a nice fascist rant the other day. Benny Johnson, is that Charlie Kirk twice? Is there two podcasts he's on, or two streams? Maybe, I guess it's Turning Point? I don't fucking know. BPD, another one. Stephen Crowder, and Dan Bongino. So, when you're looking for information on politics, the only choice of a straight man who's going to tell you it from a left-wing perspective on election night who did well in the top 10 is Hassan. That's it. Everyone else is far right, and they're also saying the exact same shit. So it's like a 1 out of 10 chance, like basically you're going to be fed information that isn't going against this insanely conservative, toxic narrative. And just talking about Hassan, he elaborated on this recently. It's something I agree with him with, just about how every male community online is just a cesspool now.
There is a massive amount of right-wing radicalization that has been occurring, especially in younger male spaces. Everything is completely dominated by right-wing politics. If you're a dude under the age of 30 and you have any hobbies whatsoever, whether it's playing video games, whether it's working out, whether it's, I don't know, listening to like a history podcast or whatever, every single facet of that is just completely dominated by center-right to, I wouldn't say far right in the same way that it was back in like the 2016 era at the end of like Obama's administration, but like definitely center right to Trumpian right, like openly Trump right, not like genuinely neo-Nazi. That part is quieted down a little bit, but like they're like 90% of the way there for the most part. And that's it. Everything that they see is right-wing sentiment being expressed by individuals that they find charismatic, thought leaders, influencers that they subscribe to. And I think that that is some.
So yeah, it's the stuff I've been saying, but he's obviously right. And it's also like, you like Star Wars. You're a man who likes Star Wars. Type that in on YouTube. Nearly every Star Wars YouTube channel is going to be some racist right-wing culture war warrior. You like video games. Who are the biggest streamers? Dr. Disrespect. And he's heavily leaning into that right-wing grift right now. And people like who were former gamer streamers like XQC and Asmongold, they're just these right-wing streamers now. And nearly every community online is just overrun. And linking to the other video I recorded tonight, it's just so far right as well. It's not just like centrist libertarians who are like live and let live. It's literal far right politics now infecting all of these communities. And of course, this is more of an American thing, but it's not relegated to America. Football culture in the UK has always been a hotbed for this stuff, and it's getting better. And thankfully it's getting better because it's getting less male dominated as well, which I think helps. But I think just generally, when online, when men get together and Western men get together, it usually just becomes dominated by right-wing politics. Now, there are some good places to go for like more left-wing community, but as we see with like the top podcasts in America, we see with the top streams on election night, we see with so much of these YouTube channels that make so much money, young men from a very young age are just getting absolutely bombarded with all this shit. And I can safely say, as someone who grew up loving gaming YouTube, machinima, all of this stuff growing up, it wasn't a thing when I was growing up. Like, I loved my history, I loved my politics from a young age. Not saying I had like really left-wing politics from a young age. I was like I'd say like a centre-left contrarian. But I remember watching gaming YouTube, and you didn't know anything about politics. No one talked about politics. No one talked about in gaming YouTube channels. I'm not talking about like the gaming scene online, which was full of like just the most horrible stuff. But it's like you weren't made to think a certain way politically. But now politics is in everything. You cannot consume any of this media anymore online without just this like far right agenda being shoved down your throat. And I despair for these kids because a lot of it is purely motivated by financial interest. So YouTube, let's use the Star Wars example. So many of these Star Wars grifters, they make a million videos talking about the Acolyte being woke and bad, not because they passionately hate the Acolyte for being woke and bad at how they see it. It's because it makes them money. but they don't give a shit about the effect it has on people's minds. That if you're a 15-year-old watching that, it's going to affect you because these anti-fandoms online, they hate stuff for money, but it affects other people's like views towards like marginalized groups, minorities, left-wing people. And the reason the right wing is popular is because they can fund so much of this stuff as well. On YouTube, they make it for money, but with podcasts, all those streams, they're funded by right wing like millionaires and billionaires as well. So the reason Gen Z and it's the Gen Z men as well. So so many of their streamers and their culture is just being infected with this shit. It's so hard to escape it, and also you have that hive mentality. I'll talk from my own experience for a little bit. It's hard as a man unless you're really secure in your beliefs to go against the crowd. Like if anyone, you wouldn't ever meet someone I know in real life, but most people will tell you I've always been very similar because I've always been super secure in my identity. I've always liked myself. I've always believed in myself. I've always, believed. I've always been educated. I've always liked what I've liked, and I don't give a fuck what people think. Like I really don't care, and that is one thing most people will tell you. But when I go into male-dominated communities, I'm often uncomfortable, and I do it anyway. But because you can kind of sense the culture, like I play for football teams at the moment, and we don't talk about politics, and that's a very British thing. British people do not talk about politics, but you can get a sense, and I get a sense, and I purposefully distance myself from them because I feel like if I go down that, I'm not going to like what I find, and I'm going to have to stop being friends with these people because I know I'm not going to stay friends with people who have like outright prejudices and stuff, right? But for most men, especially if you're lonely and seeking community and you're a white man, is that going to be a deal breaker? When most of the people in these communities think the same way. A lot of people just go along with it, sadly, because a lot of people are not secure and you're just looking for that community, you're looking for that friendship, and it's hard to go against it. It's hard to stand up for yourself. And I've always, that's what I've hated most about football culture. And I said to my dad recently, like, because there was a couple of us from one of these one of my primary school, we played in a football team with a certain group of people from another school near us, and we just were so like odd. We're odd ones out, and I've always been the odd one out at football. Not that anyone would notice, but I've always felt like out of place in these communities, and you just feel like if you challenge people in them, you're going to be ostracized. And it's something I guess we have to do better as men is mainly just talk about this stuff and realize when we're like being taken advantage of. I think the one redeeming thing in the UK is there's a big socialist element to football, which is our main male dominated culture, right? Liverpool Football Club, Celtic Football Club. That's more like a northern Scottish thing, like northern English Scottish thing. But in America, it's just like, I don't even think people are saying we need more Hassans. I don't even think that's it. I just think with the economic situation at the moment, there's just nothing to stop young men going into the arms of these people, and there's nothing to stop people being incentivized to capitalize on this hatred to make more money, like from YouTube videos and stuff like that. So yeah, Gen Z men are not doing okay, and as I might talk about before I go off, it's also obviously affecting their compatibility with, if they want to have straight relationships with women, because yeah, Gen Z women, although are becoming more right wing on this election, are broadly trending more left wing, and that's a clash of you have Gen Z men going right wing, like women going the other way, and what's going to happen is it's going to be like a self-fulfilling prophecy of Gen Z men being told that like they deserve a certain lifestyle and it's all the women's fault for being woke, so they become more hateful towards women and left-wing ideologies, which just perpetuates a cycle of them not going to have any attention from women, basically. And yeah, so that is it for this segment.